I had always considered myself a level-headed woman, or so I thought. Enter Hannah Garrison Archidio, the middle school science teacher who believed she had her life figured out. My boyfriend, Colby Brennan, was my anchor, tall, dark, and suave, the kind of guy my friends swooned over. Coming from one of Savannah's elite families, I mistakenly believed I was his unique catch. Little did I know I was just another pawn in their social game. Then, fate decided to throw in a plot twist I never saw coming. As I stepped out of the elevator, my heart skipped a beat, not with the usual butterflies, but with shock, as I caught Colby making out with a red-headed bombshell dressed in a skin-tight crimson dress. Standing frozen, I felt the cold weight of reality settle over me. Anger had no time to rise. Oh no, I promised myself he'd pay for this, and I'd make sure of it. The makeup session before me continued uninterrupted, but then the femme fatale turned, locking eyes with me. A slow, mocking grin spread across her face as she threw her words like daggers. "Are you the cleaning lady? We need you to come back later, sweetheart." The audacity. Colby's oblivious face paled at the sound of her voice, and I could practically hear the crickets chirping as he stood shell-shocked. This woman, gorgeous and utterly confident, was brushing herself off like nothing untoward had happened. Meanwhile, I stood there clutching my purse, but also my sanity, knowing this was just the prologue to my revenge story. The elevator dinged, and I casually stepped back inside, calculating my next move with a smile. No apologies were coming my way. It was time I showed my true colors. I replayed the scene in my head, the disillusionment settling in as I witnessed the intimate tableau. There was Colby, arms around her, blissfully unaware of my incredulous gaze. She was stunning, the type of beauty that would make a runway model jealous, and I was walking into a scene that felt like a bad romantic comedy. But oh, this would be my comedy, and I had all the best lines ready. As if scripted to perfection, she spotted me with a look that lacked any trace of guilt. No hint of surprise crossed her perfectly contoured face as her smile morphed into something wickedly amusing. She leaned back into him, as if claiming him as her personal trophy, and the nerve of it stoked my inner warrior. I couldn't help but smirk at the absurdity of the moment. They were just too wrapped up in their ridiculous fantasy. With a calm that belied the chaos erupting in my chest, I took a deliberate step forward, my heels echoing on that polished floor. "Not the cleaning lady, just the girlfriend," I stated coolly, emphasizing my unexpected identity. I gestured toward the honored guest in his arms. Colby's complexion shifted from pale to ghostly white, and the fish-out-of-water act began as he stammered, grasping at the air, trying desperately to piece together an explanation. But there was no way to justify this blunder, and I was determined to revel in his discomfort. I took a step back, my heart racing. "Don't touch me," I spat, making a point to create distance. I turned to the woman who was regaining her composure, smoothing her dress like a peacock fluffing its feathers after a rainstorm. "Does he always tell you he's single?" I asked, my words tinged with sarcasm. She shrugged, the queen of nonchalance, as if I were discussing the weather rather than her leading role in this melodrama. "We're just getting to know each other," she chirped, casting a sly glance at Colby as if he were a jester in her court. Oh, how her coolness stoked my fury, but I kept my composure. No point in losing my cool now. Looking back at Colby, I couldn't help but notice how his shirt was almost drenched with sweat, a sight that brought a smirk to my face. "I'll let you two finish," I said sharply, but the glint in my eye was anything but sweet. "Don't worry, I'm leaving. Just wanted you to know, though, I see you for who you really are." With that, I turned on my heels toward the elevator, Colby's voice spluttering behind me. "Hannah, please just let me explain." But that door closed just in time to snuff out his excuses. As I exhaled, it felt like I'd finally escaped a suffocating room. I was free, and also fuming. As soon as I reached my car, my phone began to buzz like a rabid bee. It was Colby, but I rejected the call. Not now. I needed to cultivate the icy resolve bubbling inside me. The woman in the dress thought she'd snagged a prize, and Colby believed this would blow over with flowery words. But I was about to embark on a truth campaign. The game was just warming up, and I was ready for battle. The wine glass weighed heavily as I clenched it, but I wasn't here to sip my sorrows. I was on an investigative mission, gathering evidence that would piece together this absurd puzzle. My thumb flew over Bellamy's Instagram, scrolling through her glossy posts, brunch pics and yoga poses that previously seemed innocent enough. But then I spotted something potent, a garden design I recognized instantly. Colby had raved about it, it practically danced in his dreams. And there it was in Bellamy's caption, "My amazing boyfriend designed this space for our dream home." My stomach twisted like a roller coaster. The unraveling continued as I moved to the next post, spotting yet another of Colby's designs, a living space that screamed his signature style. There she was again, beaming in the foreground while captioning some sappy message about planning their dream home. A mortifying chill gripped me. She had been broadcasting their romance while I was left in the dark. Screenshots were piling up in my phone, further confirming the nightmare unfolding before my eyes. It was abundantly clear now, they were building a life together without me even being a ghost of a memory. Rushing forward, I realized I needed more than just evidence skimming the surface of social media. I needed the hardcore proof that they had been clandestinely meeting under the ruse of work while Colby fed me his circus of lies. A light bulb flashed. I remembered Marcus, the friendly security guard with a keen eye, always ready to chat when I passed by. He saw everything that occurred in that building, and I made it my mission to glean whatever intel I could get from him. As I stepped out into the cool night air, it didn't faze me. Adrenaline fueled my determination. I was a woman on a mission, ready to unwrap the truth like a kid on Christmas morning. Walking into the building, I found Marcus behind his desk, flipping through a magazine. When he saw me, surprise crossed his face. "Miss Hannah," he said, his smile bright as if I were a celebrity in the room. "You okay? Haven't seen you in a while." I plastered on a tight smile as I leaned against the desk. "I'm fine, Marcus," I replied, forcing earnestness into my voice. "Just need to ask you something." The curiosity danced in his eyes. I was ready to decode this tangled web. "Do you remember Bellamy Richardson?" I asked casually, watching him closely to gauge his reaction, like a hawk scanning the ground for its next meal. Bellamy Marcus pushed his glasses up on the bridge of his nose, his brow furrowed in thought before he nodded. "Oh, yeah, her. She's been here a lot, always seemed like Cole's #1 fan, asking him for advice on everything under the sun." I kept my expression neutral, nodding along, while I couldn't help but itch to know more. "Do you recall when exactly she showed up?" I leaned in, lowering my voice. He typed away on his computer, his fingers flying over the keys. "Every Tuesday and Thursday, 6 to 8, he said, as if it were common knowledge. Pizza night for her and Colby, I thought. Then I pressed further, trying not to sound too curious. "Did she ever mention anything about their relationship?" A moment of silence hung in the air, punctuated only by the clickety-clack of Marcus' keyboard. He shifted slightly, nodding slow, confirming my worst fears. "She was all about their future, even showed me some rings she liked. Said they were picking them out soon." The confirmation sank in, but I kept my poker face on, not letting my distaste bubble to the surface as I thanked him, stuffing all those little bits of info into my pocket like precious gems of insight. I glanced back at the security log as I snapped a photo, timestamp included, like a detective in a 90s cop show. "Thanks, Marcus. You've been a gem," I said, the sarcasm laced under my sincere words. Marcus, looking a bit anxious, muttered something about not meaning to drag me into this mess. I waved him off, pocketing my phone as I headed out, every thought swirling through my head like a dizzying whirlwind. It was clear now I needed to bring Colby to justice, not just for grins or revenge, but to unveil the truth he'd kept hidden like a nasty little secret. As I walked into the dinner, the warmth enveloped me, but the familial buzz did nothing for my raging storm. Colby stood at the entrance looking dapper enough to charm a snake. His eyes lit up as he saw me, the relief washing over his face like a soap opera moment. "Hannah, you look radiant," he exclaimed, a little too enthusiastically. "I'm so glad you're here. Let's make this work." His hopeful tone nearly made me snicker, but I held it together. "Where's your grandmother?" I asked, keeping it cool and collected, while inside I was a bubbling pot of mischief. "Inside," he replied, his tone still dripping with optimism. "Greeting everyone." I felt like a judge, ready to sentence him without a trial as I made my way past him, his obliviousness almost comical. I stepped into the living room where Dona Eugenia was working her magic, greeting guests as if she were royalty. Her sharp gaze landed on me, and she clasped my hands in hers, beaming like I was her long-lost daughter. "You're glowing. Colby is so lucky." She somehow saw right through the cracks in our facade, but I danced around compliments like it was a CHA. Colby finally began mingling, blissfully ignorant of the storm clouds hanging overhead. As dinner was served, the atmosphere felt almost too jovial, like an awful sitcom where no one wants to mention the outrageous plot twist. Colby was back to being Mr. Charming, laughing and pouring wine, throwing his arm around me as if we were the picture-perfect couple. I played my role, smiling, while the plan to expose him simmered beneath my calm exterior. I could feel the moment brewing, and when it arrived, oh boy, there would be no escape for him. With every passing minute, the perfect moment was edging closer, just waiting for its cue. I hovered near the table, engaging in polite chatter, but my mind was a million miles away, crafting the ultimate reveal. The family, believing in a paradise reconciled, waited for a heartfelt moment to unfold, unaware that I was the one orchestrating an entirely different show this time around. Dinner flowed, laughter echoed, and deep inside, a snicker bubbled up at the thought of the inevitable. Colby wouldn't know what hit him. After the last bite of dessert was cleared from the enticing table, Dona Eugenia rose, exuding an authority that had been honed over decades. "Family," she announced, her voice a melodious command, "it's time for our gratitude circle." One by one, relatives began to express their thanks, each trying hard to outshine the last in a family tradition that sometimes felt more like a competitive sport. When my turn was close, Colby stood next to me with that hopeful gleam in his eye, silently pleading for me to paint our future with romantic strokes. "Sorry, buddy, not happening this time." I stood up, smoothing my dress with a dramatic flair that had less to do with the outfit and more to do with the impending drama. Clutching the iPad, my secret weapon, I scanned the 42 expectant faces around the table, locking eyes with Colby for a split second, long enough to feel the tension crackling in the air. "I'm grateful for many things this year," I began, keeping my voice steady, feeling the delicious sweet-tear courage bubbling within. Then, with a signature twist, I dropped the bomb. "I'm grateful for discovering exactly who Colby is before making the biggest mistake of my life." Cue the silence, thick, heavy, and electric, like the calm before a deliciously chaotic summer storm. Colby's face transformed into a ghostly white, the words hanging over us like a dark cloud, and I knew I had them all captured on my electronic evidence board. I swiped my iPad to reveal the first screenshot. KS stunning garden designs featured prominently on Bellamy Richardson's Instagram feed. Murmurs of shock erupted as family members leaned in, their eyes widening. "And here's more," I continued, swiping to the next post highlighting their future together. I let the truth simmer, allowing everyone to soak in the betrayal as if it was the juiciest gossip at a summer picnic. Next came the visitor logs from Colby's office, where unknowing family members wouldn't suspect a thing. "Look here," I proclaimed, showing the visitor sign-ins from his office building. Bellamy signed in every Tuesday and Thursday for the last 4 months. The gasp was collective, everyone calculating the implications faster than a game of Uno. With expert flair, I showed a snapshot of Bellamy's Instagram, where the barista had confirmed their relationship. She always played along like good old-fashioned theater. "Colby, this isn't a misunderstanding," I interjected through the thick tension. "This is who you are, a man who lets another woman call him her boyfriend without a peep." Dona Eugenia, ice cold now, turned to Colby, her gaze pinning him down like an insect on display. Is this true, Colby? The tension cracked as he tried to protest but succeeded only in faint whispers. Yes, he eventually muttered, his bravado evaporating like fog in the sun. Dona Eugenia's response swung like a pendulum from soft to hard with a mastery that could silence a room full of chatter. Illa, she said, her voice almost comforting, yet piercing like a dart. You've shown strength that Colby clearly lacks. The glare she directed at him transformed, raging fierceness radiating outward. You have disgraced this family. It's a travesty to dishonor someone who trusted you. The breath left the room, everyone held on tightly to their seat, breathless. Colby stood frozen like a deer in headlights, embarrassment flushing through him. The final cut came when Dona Eugenia delivered her verdict, each word echoing in the silence like a shrill whistle. Get. Colby's face morphed from disbelief to desperation as he pleaded with me, but I was adamant. Get out, Colby, I said calmly, like I was dismissing a wayward puppy. The scraping of his chair was the loudest farewell imaginable. The front door slammed shut, leaving a silence that felt like a punctuation mark at the end of a dramatic sentence. Dona Eugenia, ever the epitome of grace, simply took a sip of her bourbon and turned to me with a twinkle in her eye. Hannah, dear, would you hand over that pecan pie? She asked, undeterred by the tension. As the dust settled, the family gradually snapped back into the rhythm of chatter, albeit with a new undercurrent of gossip. Uncle Bernard raised his glass in my direction, and Aunt Lucille leaned in with a conspiratorial whisper, "That boy never deserved you." I couldn't help but feel empowered. But before I could bask in my little victory, Dona Eugenia pulled me aside. You're always welcome here, regardless of what Colby did. You really deserve better, she reassured me, and I nodded, knowing my liberation was only just beginning. The aftermath of Thanksgiving hit Savannah like a viral TikTok dance. By morning, my phone was blowing up with messages from acquaintances, ones I hadn't heard from in ages. The news of Colby's public humiliation spread faster than a rumor in high school, and the real-life implications were way more intense than I ever expected. Standing up to Colby in that room felt empowering, but witnessing the ripple effect made me realize just how steeped his family was in local folklore. Moments later, I got a text from Catherine that knocked the wind out of me. Colby's inheritance was on the chopping block, Mother Eugenia was rewriting her will. Suddenly, that sprawling mansion on Gaston Street, the one Colby had taken for granted, was slipping through his fingers like sand. She's rewriting the will? I echoed, making sure I sounded steadier than I felt. Catherine assured me, he's facing real consequences now. You deserve this, Hannah. Join me for brunch next Sunday, just us girls. I took a deep breath. This was bigger than just Colby. I was dismantling the castle he thought he built. Days later, I bumped into Uncle Bernard, who gleefully recounted, "That Thanksgiving dinner? Best entertainment I've had in years." He leaned in like we were sharing a classified secret. Colby showed up at my office trying to contest Mother Eugenia's will changes. He doesn't stand a chance, trust me. I smiled inwardly. Colby was scrambling for something that was already lost, and the family connections he banked on were now turning against him. How sweet the irony tasted. As the week rolled on, Colby's world disintegrated around him. His clients started dropping him like hot potatoes, and the prestigious reputation of his law firm took a nosedive as word spread that KBY was no longer the crown jewel it once was. Bellamy, aiming to ride on Colby's coattails, took a hit too. Her social media following plummeted. Desperate to rebrand herself, she floundered in the wellness sphere, but the harsh comments haunted her like a bad hangover. Then came another text from Catherine, he's moved to Charlotte for a fresh start. Less pay, of course, but we know how that goes. I raised an eyebrow, letting her words wash over me. Simultaneously, the corner of my mouth lifted at a message from Sterling. The world was aligning in my favor, one sweet coincidence at a time, while Colby faded further into the background where he belonged. My life was advancing, unencumbered by the ghost of who he used to be, and it felt undeniably fabulous. Colby had always thought he could dance around the consequences like a ballerina twirling on a stage, but life had other plans. He'd been brought low, and I was just reveling in the sweet strums of poetic justice. The past week had felt like a revival for me, especially as I stood looking out at Savannah's lively streets, reflecting on how this city witnessed the crumble of his facade. It was a delicious reminder of the power I had rediscovered. Gone were the days of feeling unworthy or overlooked. Thanksgiving had not merely served turkey, it had feasted on my former doubts. With every whispered snub Colby received from those who once worshipped him, I savored my liberation as if it were the finest chocolate. I had emerged victorious, reclaiming my peace, dignity, and surprisingly, a touch of power I hadn't anticipated. After that dinner, my life had almost done a pirouette of its own. I casually picked up my phone to see a message from Sterling that brought a burst of warmth. "Are we still on for dinner tonight?" it read, and I couldn't help but grin. My reply was instantaneous and laced with excitement for our evening together. The reassurance that Cole's name wouldn't tarnish our evening felt like a fortuitous blessing. Sterling embodied the qualities I'd once wished for but never found. He was kind, genuine, and a better listener than anyone at my Thanksgiving table. But linger as it may, the shadow of Colby was hard to shake off entirely. Each time I thought of him, there was still that sting, a reminder of betrayal. It bewildered me how effortlessly he had traded my trust for fleeting desires. Yet, I refused to let his actions dictate who I was anymore. My days of feeling insignificant or unwanted were swapped for pride rooted deeply in my self-worth and the knowledge that I deserved better. And what a life I had now. Teaching at Forsyth Elementary felt rejuvenating, with kids practically excited about grammar. The charm of laughter that Sterling brought was like a soothing balm for my spirit, something I hadn't realized I missed. And let's not forget Dona Eugenia, my steadfast pillar, whose support helped me see Colby for who he truly was. That birthday dinner wasn't just a meal, it was my phoenix moment, rising from the ash of the past. Colby was now just a flickering candlelight in my memory, barely illuminating the path I had forged without him. The unnecessary anger had metamorphosed into indifference, demonstrating how I had victoriously moved on from the tempest he had once unleashed. The storms in my life had passed, leaving nothing but clear skies and the playful chirping of birds signifying new beginnings. Tonight, I prepared for that delightful dinner with Sterling, a prospect filled with laughter and dreams of the future. It felt like a balloon lifting higher with every fond thought. The delightful notion of finding closure and peace in my existence overshadowed any vindictive urges I might have felt before. As I nestled into the joy of the moment, I realized that the true essence of victory was living a life bursting with happiness, which was a far sweeter revenge than anything else. So come with me, dear friends, into the next chapter.